Social work is bleeding heart nonsense, my mother spat, her voice sharp enough to cut through bone. The dinner table fell silent. My father looked down at his plate, my brother shifted uncomfortably, and I froze with my fork in midair. Her words weren't new. But this time, something inside me cracked. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I have to ask you, have you ever been betrayed by the person you wanted most to believe in you? I didn't speak. I just chewed slowly, trying to mask the way her dismissal lodged itself like glass in my throat. My work wasn't glamorous. It wasn't lucrative. But every day, I fought for children who had no one. For families on the brink of collapse. For people who needed someone to believe in them when no one else did, and here was my mother, the woman who raised me, calling it nonsense. Jennifer, she said again, shaking her head. All that effort, and for what? You could have been a lawyer. You could have made real money. My chest tightened. The room blurred. She didn't see the nights I stayed late at the shelter. She didn't see the children who clung to me as if I was their last anchor in the storm. She didn't see the single mother crying in my office when I told her she could keep her son because I found her safe housing. All she saw was a paycheck that wasn't big enough. I wanted to scream. To tell her that money isn't the only proof of worth. That dignity, survival, and second chances matter. But instead, I bit my tongue until I tasted blood, because I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd break. That night, I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mother's words echoing like a curse. Bleeding heart nonsense, she had no idea. But soon, she would, and when the day came, the whole world would see. The next morning, I poured my coffee and overheard my mother's voice drifting from the kitchen phone. Jennifer's wasting her life, she told my aunt, her words slicing through the thin wall like a knife. All that education, and she's basically babysitting junkies and welfare cases. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing. That one burned. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, gripping my mug so hard I thought it might shatter. It wasn't just dinner table disdain anymore. She was spreading it. Turning my life's work into gossip, into shame. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because here's my question. What do you do when your own blood becomes the loudest voice against you? I didn't confront her. Not then. I walked into the kitchen, smiled tightly, and poured more coffee while she scrambled eggs, acting as if her words hadn't gutted me. She didn't even flinch. Didn't even look guilty. That week, I buried myself in work. At the shelter, I sat with a teenager who hadn't eaten in 3 days. I found emergency housing for a mother of 3 who was sleeping in her car. I filed reports until my hands cramped, my eyes stung, and exhaustion blurred my vision. Each life I touched reminded me why I stayed. Why the insults didn't matter, but they did matter, because when I finally got home, my mother was waiting at the dining table, bills spread out in front of her. You're 32, Jennifer, she said flatly. No husband. No children. Barely any savings. Tell me again how this is a real career. I stared at her across the table, my jaw tight, my pulse thundering in my ears. I wanted to slam my hands down, to tell her about the children who were alive because of me, the mothers who had second chances because I fought for them. Instead, I just said, you'll see. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. See what? I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew one day, she would eat those words. And when she did, the entire country would be watching. It started with a phone call. Jennifer, this is Congressman Davis's office. We've been following your advocacy on child welfare reform. We'd like you to testify before Congress next month. I froze at my desk, the receiver pressed against my ear, my mind spinning. Me? Congress? I'd spent years fighting in the trenches, courtrooms, shelters, kitchens where mothers broke down at my desk. But this was different. This was national. A platform so large, even my mother couldn't ignore it. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I need to ask you something. What happens when your life's calling suddenly collides with your deepest wound? I hung up the phone and just sat there, staring at the stack of case files in front of me. For the first time, I felt the weight of possibility pressing down. That night at dinner, I tried to tell my family I was asked to testify before Congress, I said, my voice steady but my hands trembling under the table. My father's fork clattered against his plate. Jennifer, that's incredible. But my mother didn't even look up. She sliced into her meat, chewed, swallowed, then said, "Don't get your hopes up. Politicians use people like you for optics. Nothing changes." Her words hit harder than I expected. Even in the face of the biggest opportunity of my life, she couldn't give me an inch. I excused myself from the table before my father could say anything else. Upstairs, I sat in the dark, letting the silence press against me, but beneath the ache, something else stirred, resolved. I thought of every child's face I'd ever seen. Every mother I'd ever held while she sobbed. Every moment I wanted to quit but didn't. I wouldn't just testify. I would make her hear me, whether she wanted to or not, and when the cameras turned on, my mother would see me. Not the disappointment she'd convinced herself I was, but the woman the world was about to know. The weeks leading up to the testimony felt like a blur of fluorescent lights, endless notes, and sleepless nights. I studied policy drafts until my eyes burned, rehearsed answers to questions I hadn't yet been asked, and rewrote my opening statement a dozen times until every word carried fire. But at home? Silence. My father tried. He asked about my prep, slipped me coffee in the mornings, even gave me a quiet thumbs up as if his approval might patch the wound my mother kept carving open. She never mentioned it. Not once. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I need to ask, how do you carry the weight of a nation's children when your own mother won't carry even a sliver of faith in you? One night, I came home to find her sitting in the living room, TV glowing across her face. She didn't look up when I walked in, but I heard her say under her breath, "All for nothing." It was like being stabbed, clean and quick. I wanted to shout. To tell her that she was wrong, that I wasn't wasting my life, that this was bigger than her narrow view of success. Instead, I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and sat on the floor with my speech in my lap. This isn't just my story, I whispered to myself, staring at the words. This is theirs. The children. The families. The ones who don't get to speak for themselves. I pressed my hand against my chest, steadying the storm inside me. When the day finally came, I buttoned my blazer with trembling hands and stood before the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Stronger. Sharper. Ready. At the breakfast table, my father whispered, "Proud of you, kiddo." My mother? She sipped her coffee, eyes fixed on the paper. Not a word. Fine, she didn't have to come. Because soon, she wouldn't be able to look away, and when my voice echoed across the chamber, carried live on every screen, she'd finally see me, not as her daughter to dismiss, but as the woman the world was waiting to hear. The chamber was colder than I expected. Rows of suited faces stared back at me, cameras perched like hawks above their shoulders. The air hummed with quiet expectation. I sat down, adjusted the microphone, and felt the weight of the moment press into my spine. My name is Jennifer Miller, I began, my voice steady though my palms trembled beneath the table. And I am a social worker. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I need to ask you something. What would you do if the system built to protect children kept failing them, and no one seemed to care? I spoke of the children I'd met, not names, but stories. The boy who slept in a car because no foster home would take him. The baby pulled from her mother's arms because housing paperwork was delayed. The teenager shuffled through 5 placements in 1 year. I didn't just give them statistics. I gave them voices. Faces flickered in the audience, some hardened, some softened. Cameras zoomed closer. I'm not here asking for sympathy, I said, my voice sharpening. I'm asking for change. Because children are not case numbers. Families are not failures waiting to happen. And if we continue to look away, then we are the ones failing. The room went still. For a heartbeat, even I forgot to breathe, and then, a rustle of papers, a cough, a question. "Ms. Miller," one congressman asked, leaning forward, "why do you keep doing this work? With low pay, long hours, and, as you said, a failing system? Why stay?" The answer rose without hesitation. Because every child deserves at least one person who doesn't give up on them. And if that has to be me, then so be it. Flashbulbs snapped. Pens scratched. Cameras rolled. For the first time in my life, my voice carried farther than I could have imagined, but as I left the chamber, heart pounding, I couldn't stop wondering, was my mother watching, and if she was? Would she finally see me? That night, the house glowed with the blue light of the television. C-SPAN. My face filled the screen, my voice echoing through our living room like I'd never heard it before. I stood in the doorway, frozen. My father sat forward on the couch. Eyes locked on me, not the me standing in the room, but the me commanding the chamber in Washington, and beside him, my mother. Arms crossed. Jaw tight. Watching. My name is Jennifer Miller, the screen version of me said. And I am a social worker. The silence in the room was deafening. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I need to ask, what does it take to make someone finally hear you, when words alone were never enough? On screen, I was calm. Powerful. Every syllable landed like a strike of lightning. Off screen, my hands trembled as I waited for her reaction. The testimony ended. The camera cut away. My face faded into the credits. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my father turned slowly toward my mother. His voice was quiet, but heavy with something I'd never heard before. Honey, isn't that our daughter? Speaking to Congress? My mother didn't answer. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her chest rising and falling too fast. Finally, she looked at me. Not the screen me, the real me, standing in the doorway, heart hammering. Jennifer, she whispered, the sharpness gone from her voice. I didn't know. I almost laughed. Didn't know? Or didn't want to know. The air felt electric, charged with years of dismissal colliding with undeniable truth. My father leaned forward, his eyes soft. Tell us more, Jen. Tell us what it's really like, what you do. And for the first time in my life, my mother didn't interrupt. She just sat there, silent, waiting. It wasn't apology. It wasn't redemption. Not yet, but it was a crack. A fracture in the wall she'd built between us, and I knew exactly how to drive it wider. The next morning, sunlight cut across the dining room table where my mother sat with her coffee. She didn't look up when I entered, but I could feel the weight of what had shifted the night before. I sat across from her, hands clasped, heart thundering. Mom, I said quietly. We need to talk. Her eyes flicked up, cautious, guarded. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I need to ask you something. How long can you swallow silence before it turns into poison? I leaned forward. All my life, you've called my work meaningless. You've told relatives I was wasting my degree. You've made me feel small in my own home. Her jaw tightened. I was just worried. No, I cut her off, voice shaking. But firm. You weren't worried. You were ashamed. You thought because I didn't chase money or prestige, I wasn't enough. But last night, you saw it. You saw the world listen to me. You saw the impact you never cared to see. She flinched, her fingers tightening around the mug. Do you know how many children are alive because of the work you call nonsense? Do you know how many mothers get to hold their babies because I fought for them? My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. You didn't have to believe in me, Mom. But you didn't have to tear me down either. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, my mother's eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Guilt? Shame? Regret? Finally, she whispered, Jennifer? I didn't realize how much it mattered to you. I laughed bitterly. That's the problem. You never realized. Or maybe you didn't want to. Her eyes fell to the table, her coffee untouched. I stood. My voice softened, but it carried more steel than it ever had. You don't have to respect me, Mom. But the world does now. And whether you admit it or not, you'll never be able to erase that. She stayed silent. But I saw the truth in her eyes. For the first time, my mother knew she'd been wrong, and that was the beginning of her undoing. Weeks passed, but something fundamental had shifted. At family dinners, my mother no longer mocked my work. She didn't praise it either, but the silence felt different now, not dismissive, but uneasy, like she was wrestling with something she couldn't say aloud. One evening, I came home to find her in the living room again. The TV flickered with a news panel replaying my testimony. Experts were quoting my words, debating reform, calling my name, and there she was, watching, listening. My name is Jennifer. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because I want to ask you one last question. What does justice really look like, when it isn't revenge, but recognition? I stood behind her, quiet, until she turned. Her face looked older, softer somehow. "Jennifer," she whispered. I was wrong." The words landed heavier than any insult she had ever thrown. For years, I had starved for them. Dreamed of hearing them. And now, here they were, fragile, trembling, but real. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw it back in her face. I just let the silence stretch until she lowered her eyes. "Do you know what hurts the most, Mom?" I finally said. My voice was steady, sharp as glass. "That it took a Congress hearing and national cameras for you to believe in me. You could have been proud of me years ago. You chose not to." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I stepped closer, calm now, almost weightless. "You don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to erase the nights I cried because of you. But you will live with the truth. The world respects the work you mocked. And deep down, you know you were wrong." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but she didn't deny it. Couldn't. I turned, heading upstairs, my heart lighter than it had ever been, because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about every child I'd fought for, every family I'd saved, every voice that had gone unheard until mine carried it forward, and for the first time in my life, I felt free.